We, Homo sapiens, seem to be suffering from a collective syndrome of delusions of grandeur, firmly believing that we are the only civilization to ever spring up, spew smoke, and wreak havoc on this ancient planet. But let's try to lower our egos and look at this number. Earth has been spinning in the universe for 4.5 billion years. Complex life has been crawling around here for 400 million years. And what we call the industrial era, with factories, cars, and smartphones, a mere 300 years. 300 years compared to 4.5 billion years. It's like stepping into a party that has been going on for a century at the very last millisecond, seeing a spotless floor and screaming, "I'm the first one here!" How naive. Science calls this the absence of evidence. But I, Zorro, call it selective blindness. If a reptilian civilization or some intelligent species had built an empire and was then wiped out 50 million years ago, what do you think would be left? Skyscrapers? Reinforced concrete? No. Time is a brutal butcher. He grinds everything into fine dust. Two scientists from NASA and the University of Rochester dared to ask a crazy question that academia avoids. What if we aren't the first? What if what we are doing, heating up the Earth, emitting carbon, is actually just an old script that has played out before? Put your arrogance aside. Today, we are going to dig through the trash bin of geological history to search for forgotten ghosts. Welcome, skeptics, to Dark History. Imagine you are standing alone on a beach at midnight. The pitch-black waves are licking at your feet. Cold, endless. You bend down and scoop up a handful of sand. Every grain of sand is a moment in time. Every grain is a year, a century, a millennium. The amount of sand resting in the palm of your hand, that is the entire history of humanity. 10,000 years. From when our ancestors learned to stick rice seeds into the ground to when you held a smartphone in your hand to watch this video. Just one handful of sand, and the beach stretching endlessly behind your back, sinking deep into the darkness where your eyes cannot reach. That is the 4.5 billion years prior to that. And somewhere in that murky night, buried beneath layers of time so thick they defy all imagination, a question lies in wait like a ticking time bomb. Did someone stand here before us? Sound familiar? Like the script of a B-grade sci-fi movie, right? Like Ancient Aliens, or those cheap conspiracy theories you read at 2 a.m. I know what you're thinking. Come on, Zorro, is this about aliens building the pyramids again? Number. Throw that thought away. Because in 2018, two of the most prestigious minds in mainstream science, people who never believe in nonsense, threw this question right in the faces of their colleagues. Adam Frank, an astrophysicist from the University of Rochester, and Gavin Schmidt, director of the NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies. Yes, that's NASA, not some amateur YouTubers. They published a shocking paper in the International Journal of Astrobiology with a title that sounds gentle but whose content is spine-chilling: The Silurian Hypothesis. Calm down, movie buffs. The name is inspired by the intelligent reptilian race in the series Doctor Who. But Frank and Schmidt were not suggesting that a bunch of lizards in suits actually ran the stock market in prehistoric times. They were doing something deeper and much more dangerous than that. They were challenging what is called self-evident truth. They posed a question that made the scientific community break out in a cold sweat. If an industrial civilization existed on Earth millions of years ago, would we be able to find them? Think carefully. Why do you believe no one came before? Oh, Zorro, because we don't see anything. There are no fossilized iPhones, No ruins of nuclear power plants. No Statue of Liberty made of granite buried underground. You are so naive. In this trade of time detectives, there is a golden rule. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, especially when you understand how brutally Earth treats our toys. Look at this insane scale of time. If I compress the entire 4.5 billion year history of Earth into a single calendar year, what happens? Complex life appears in November. Dinosaurs dominate throughout December and only disappear right after Christmas. And modern humans? We only appear in the final minutes of December 31st. And our great industrial era? All the factories, satellites, internet, atomic bombs. It takes up less than a millisecond before the New Year's Eve fireworks go off. Our entire existence is just a blink of an eye. Now ask yourself, what if, in that vast void of hundreds of millions of years, another civilization rose up? A civilization that lasted 1,000 years, 10,000 years, or even 100,000 years. Double the time of our civilization? They built, they developed, they waged war, then they collapsed. After millions of years of being eroded, crushed at the bottom of the ocean, melted in the hearts of volcanoes. Would anything be left for us to find? The answer, painfully, is no. Almost nothing remains. The Earth's crust is not a museum to keep memories for us. It is a giant trash compactor. Why? Why are the skyscrapers we are so proud of more fragile than eggshells before the scythe of time? Do you hear that? That is the footstep of time. But not the kind of time you see on a wristwatch or a desk calendar. We are talking about geological time, deep time. For the Earth, human history is just an annoying alarm clock that was just snoozed. Let me show you our naivety regarding time. We often lump the age of dinosaurs into one big ball, right? Like T-Rex and Stegosaurus were neighbors going out for drinks on the weekend together. Dead wrong. The time gap between the Stegosaurus and the T-Rex is longer than the gap from the T-Rex to you. Yes, that tyrant lizard lived closer to the age of iPads and TikTok than to the age of its brothers with spines on their backs. 150 million years of dominance. And us? We've only toddled around mastering this planet for a few centuries. Yet we dare to ask, why haven't we found lizard people bones if they existed? Here is cruel truth number one. Earth hates keeping souvenirs. Fossils are not a given. They are winning the jackpot lottery. For a creature to turn into a fossil, it must die in the right spot, be buried in the right way, avoid the scavengers, and withstand the right pressure for millions of years. The success rate? Less than 1%. 99% of all creatures that ever lived on this planet have vanished without a trace. Completely wiped out. If you want to find evidence of humans from 100,000 years ago, you won't find cities. You'd be extremely lucky to find a broken tooth or a piece of skull lying amidst tons of mud. So then, what do you think will happen to our flashy civilization after a few million years? Plastic, concrete, steel. We think they are eternal? Don't be delusional. Plastic will degrade into microparticles and vanish after a few thousand years. Concrete will be eroded by acid rain. Iron and steel will rust and dissolve into the soil. The great cities, New York, Tokyo, Shanghai, will be crushed by glaciers, buried under seabed sediment, or melted when tectonic plates collide. The Earth's crust is a giant recycling system. It swallows the surface and vomits out new lava. After 50 million years, not a single physical structure of ours will exist. No pyramids, no Great Wall. So what are Adam Frank and Gavin Schmidt looking for, if they can't find the corpse They look for fingerprints. They look for things invisible to the naked eye, but that scream out in the laboratory. Chemical signatures. What does an industrial civilization do best? That's right, littering. But not plastic trash, chemical trash into the atmosphere. We burn fossil fuels. We pump billions of tons of carbon into the sky. We alter the ratio of carbon isotopes in the rocks. We scatter fertilizers, heavy metals, and radioactive substances all over the planet. That is our signature. And guess what? When scientists looked back at Earth's geological record, they found a signature that looks familiar. Rewind to 56 million years ago. An event called the PETM, the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum. Suddenly, the Earth ran a fever. Temperatures spiked by 5 to 8 degrees Celsius. The oceans acidified. Species went extinct en masse. And most importantly, a massive amount of carbon was pumped into the atmosphere in a very short time. Sound familiar? It resembles exactly what we are doing today. Resembles it to a chilling degree. Now, stay calm. Don't jump to the conclusion that aliens turned on their heaters 56 million years ago. Scientists have very reasonable explanations. Massive volcanic eruptions or methane escaping from the seabed. Completely natural. And there is a high probability they are right. It was nature. But, and this is a massive but, the Silurian Hypothesis poses a painful problem. If the signs of a natural disaster and the signs of an industrial civilization look exactly the same in the geological record, then how do we tell them apart? We look at the temperature chart from 56 million years ago and say, ah, volcanoes. But would a geologist 50 million years from now digging up the sediment of the 21st century look at it and say, ah, probably just volcanoes, while in reality it was humans driving cars and running air conditioners? We assume past events were natural because we default to the idea that no one was there. But the truth is, evidence of a brilliant civilization could have been right in front of our eyes, but we labeled it a geological phenomenon. We are looking for what we expect to find, and we are blind to what lies beyond our imagination. But if you think nature is the only one good at hiding evidence, wait until we talk about myths. History is not a textbook written clearly page by page. It is a giant jigsaw puzzle where half the pieces have been thrown into the fireplace by someone, a quarter are buried at the bottom of the sea, and the rest are Tap's head, distorted by our imagination. We look at the past through a cracked lens. Scientists say, we search for evidence. But the truth is, we only find what we are looking for. If you are holding a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And if you believe you are the first civilization, every strange ruin is just a coincidence. But there are things that refuse to lie still in the silent grave of geology. They survive in a different way, not in stone, but in stories whispered by the fire. Atlantis, Lemuria, Mu. Names that make mainstream archaeologists roll their eyes in boredom, while conspiracy theorists go crazy with joy. A brilliant continent vanishing overnight. A land of gods swallowed by the ocean due to arrogance. You might laugh and say, Zorro, those are just fairy tales. Perhaps. But explain this to me. Why does every culture on this planet, from the Sumerians in Mesopotamia, the Jews in the Bible, to the Maya tribes in the jungle or the Aborigines in the Australian desert, all share the same nightmare? The Great Flood. Why do they all remember an ancient golden age when humans lived like gods, possessed great knowledge, and then it all ended in a catastrophe of water and fire? There are three possibilities. 1. Humans are very good at making things up. We are bored with reality, so we project a glorious past to comfort ourselves. A spiritual opiate. 2. These are distorted memories, what the Vietnamese call Tam Sao That Ban, a game of telephone, of real but mundane events. Ice melting at the end of the Ice Age, sea levels rising, submerging coastal villages. Through thousands of years of storytelling, a flooded village turns into the sunken continent of Atlantis. But the third possibility is the one that keeps me awake at night. What happens if these myths are humanity's black box? What happens if deep within the memory genome of humanity, a fragment of the truth we have forgotten still remains? A ghost of lost knowledge? Look at Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. Massive stone pillars carved with exquisite detail, dating back 12,000 years. According to textbooks, at that time humans were just hunters carrying wooden sticks chasing rabbits. We didn't know farming, didn't know pottery, didn't have metal. So who built it? And more importantly, where did they learn that technique? Archaeology says human civilization developed in a straight line, from stupid to smart, from caves to high-rises. But these monuments are like sharp thorns puncturing that theory. They suggest that civilization might not be a straight line going up. It might be a circle, or worse, a sine wave. Rise, collapse, forget, then start all over again. The Silurian Hypothesis does not claim Atlantis is real. It doesn't need Atlantis to be real. It just reminds us of one cruel thing. If a brilliant civilization like Atlantis existed 100,000 years ago, and they were wiped out by a global catastrophe, then today we wouldn't find their ruins. Stone will crumble. Iron will dissolve. The only thing remaining are the crazy stories we tell children before they go to sleep. Stories warning of arrogance, of skyscrapers that dared to challenge the gods and the price that had to be paid. We laugh at myths because we think we are more civilized than them. But if we look in the mirror, we will see we are walking on the exact same beaten path of those ghosts. We are exploiting resources to exhaustion. We are changing the climate. We are playing with forces that could destroy the entire planet. And the final question, the most terrifying question, is not, who were they? It is, what will we leave behind? When the velvet curtain falls on this civilization, who will tell our story? Or will we too become a vague myth about a species of crazy monkeys that once set the sky on fire? There is a very tough argument, a trump card that skeptics often throw out to refute the hypothesis of a pre-human civilization. They say, hey Zorro, if someone was here and built an industrial society, they must have used energy, right? Why do we still find coal, oil, and gas lying intact underground waiting for us to come and suck it up? The logic sounds very sound, doesn't it? If you go into the kitchen and see the cake is still whole, it means no one ate it before you. Therefore, we smugly conclude no one has exploited this earth yet. We are the first ones to stick a straw into this planet. But this argument has two gaping holes. First, who says they used oil? A civilization could develop based on solar energy, geothermal energy, or a biotechnology that we cannot imagine. Maybe they were wiser than us. They didn't burn their roof to keep warm. Second, the issue of timing. Our massive coal seams were formed during the Carboniferous period, about 300 to 360 million years ago. If a civilization existed before that time, what would they have to burn? Coal didn't exist yet. The resource base of each era is completely different. We are judging the past with the ruler of the present. We are looking for fossilized gas stations, while they might have been riding biological dragons. But let's flip the problem around. Forget those who came before. Let's talk about us. Suppose 50 million years from now, a geologist of a new species, let's call them ant people, digs deep into the Earth's crust. What will they find about the great human era? They won't find the Statue of Liberty, won't find the internet, won't find love poems or Beethoven's symphonies. What they find will be a paper-thin, ugly layer of sediment sandwiched between layers of limestone. This is your legacy. 1. A sudden spike in carbon-12 isotopes, a sign of frantic fossil fuel burning. 2. A layer of plutonium, 239 radioactive dust, traces of atomic bomb tests and nuclear accidents. It will last longer than human history itself. 3. Heavy metals and plastic, plastiglomerates, a monstrous combination of melted plastic and beach sand. And 4, this one is the funny part, chicken bones. Yes, you heard that right. The bones of industrial chickens. We raise and eat tens of billions of chickens every year. Their bones are thrown everywhere, buried in landfills. To future archaeologists, humans are not intelligent primates. We are the chicken-worshipping species. That is what remains. A smear of radiation, plastic, and chicken bones. That is the business card we leave for the universe. Frankenschmidt's Silurian Hypothesis doesn't try to prove that dinosaurs built nuclear reactors. It matters not because of the answer, but because of the question it asks. It is a mirror. When we look into the deep past and see nothing, it might be because there truly was no one there. Or, it is because we are looking at our own future. We are looking at the futility of arrogance. Earth doesn't care about us. It survived meteors, supervolcanoes, ice ages. If we destroy ourselves tomorrow, Earth will simply shrug. It will take a few million years to heal the wounds. It will bury our cities, grind our cars into dust, and then life will begin again. A new play, new actors. And perhaps 100 million years later, some intelligent creature will stand on this very beach, pick up a handful of sand, and wonder, am I the first one? We are not the masters of this planet. We are just short-term tenants. And the lease is about to expire. The question is not, who was here before us? The real question is, what will we do so we aren't forgotten like them? Look at those dense forests out there. We burn coal to run steam engines, to light electric lamps, to build empires. Coal, basically, is the corpses of ancient forests from the Carboniferous period compressed together. But let's think a little. What if a civilization appeared even before the Carboniferous period, before those damn trees turned into coal? What would they take to burn? No fossil fuels, no oil. Would they accept freezing to death in a stone cave? Not necessarily. They could have developed energy technologies completely distinct that we, the oil addicts, cannot imagine. Geothermal energy, biological, or harnessing wind and water power at a masterful level. Technology is not a straight line. It is a maze. Look at our own history. Europeans developed metallurgy and firearms. Meanwhile, the Maya built magnificent stone cities and calculated astronomy with terrifying precision without needing a single bar of iron. Some cultures chose to build skyscrapers, others chose a nomadic lifestyle blending with the steppes. Different circumstances create different results. So, an ancient civilization, those who walked before us hundreds of millions of years ago, what could they have left behind? Maybe they left traces all over the place right in front of our eyes. But we are blind, simply because we are holding the wrong map to find the treasure. We search for plastic, concrete, steel. But what if they built their civilization from fungi, from super durable wood, or from biological gene manipulation? Those things dissolved into the earth long ago. This is when the brutal truth of geology slaps us right in the face. You think our civilization is grand? Skyscrapers, the internet network, massive landfills? The reality is, our industrial civilization has only existed for about 300 years. 300 years. If tomorrow, for some silly reason, nuclear war, AI rebellion, or environmental collapse, this one seems most plausible, we wipe ourselves off the face of the Earth, then our window of activity on the geological scale is extremely, extremely short. Put yourself in the shoes of a geologist, maybe some intelligent squid species, in the future, about 100 million years from now. They dig a hole deep into the Earth's crust. What will they see of the human era? They won't see the Statue of Liberty or the Great Wall. All that remains of the hustle and bustle today will be compressed by time and pressure. Compressed so tight it is just a paper-thin layer of sediment, a few centimeters thick, a few centimeters of dirt, containing a bit of sudden carbon spike, a few strange chemicals, and radioactive isotopes. That is your legacy. That is my legacy. A fragile stain in the giant sandwich of geological history. Very easy to miss. Very easy to mistake for a volcanic eruption or a large forest fire. If another civilization also existed for a similarly short period like us, 200 million years ago, they would also leave only a blur like that. And the further back in time you go, the more geological pressure distorts everything, making reading these pages of stone impossible. The two scientists Adam Frank and Gavin Schmidt called this epistemic humility, a fancy way of admitting that we might be stupider than we think. They are not asserting that aliens or lizard people once ruled Earth. In fact, they doubt it. The overall evidence suggests we are alone. But, and this is a big but, asking this question exposes a fatal blind spot in our science. Absence of evidence is not evidence of non-existence. The geological record is like a book with 90% of its pages torn out. The remaining pages are blurred, scorched, and written in a language we are only just beginning to spell out. We often assume every ancient event has a natural cause. Dinosaurs died due to a meteor. Temperature rose due to volcanoes. Do we ever stop and ask ourselves, could the sudden temperature rise in the Paleocene be due to some civilization burning too much coal? No. We don't ask, so we never look for the answer. The Silurian Hypothesis is not just about the past, it is a mirror reflecting our brutal present. If you want to know what a civilization leaves behind after millions of years, look at what we are doing right now. We are writing our name in stone, not with ink, but with scars. Radioactive dust. Since 1945, we have covered the globe with a thin layer of radioactive dust. It will last through the ages, an undeniable artificial signal. Carbon. We pump billions of tons of carbon into the atmosphere, changing the isotope ratio in global sediment. Mass extinction. We are slaughtering the biosphere. Species are disappearing at a dizzying rate. In the future fossil record, this will be a razor-sharp boundary, biodiversity collapsing and being replaced. Future geologists, whoever they are, will find this sediment layer. They will find the human layer. But will they understand it? Or will they look at that radioactive and carbon layer, scratch their heads, or scratch their tentacles, and conclude, must have been some strange meteor explosion? Will they recognize the signature of intelligence, or will they too make the exact same mistake as us, assuming it was all just nature? Earth keeps secrets very well. It is a perfect concealer of crimes. It buries, it crushes, and it recycles everything. We stand here, looking down into the abyss of time, trying to piece together fragments of shadows. If we never dare to ask, was there anyone before us? We will forever live in the illusion that we are unique. And maybe we are right. But maybe is not science. Maybe is comfort. So, suppose, just suppose, tomorrow humanity disappears. No one to maintain, no one to clean up. What would truly be left to testify to our existence after 100 million years? iPhones? No. Skyscrapers? Definitely not. Let's conduct a thought experiment. Suppose tomorrow, boom, every human on Earth disappears. Not like a Marvel movie, there's no dust involved. We simply evaporate. Dinner is still hot on the table, cars are still running on the highway, but there is no one behind the wheel. What will happen to all the great things we have built? The answer is not for the faint of heart. This is not science fiction. This is forensic geology. And the autopsy results of human civilization will tell us exactly who are we. First, there will be explosions. Without operators, power plants will shut down. But the most terrifying things are the nuclear reactors. Within a few days, cooling systems will fail. Reactor cores will overheat. Meltdown. A series of Chernobyl disasters will happen simultaneously across the globe. That's not all. Cities will catch fire. Lightning strikes. Electrical short circuits. Chemical reactions at abandoned factories. And not a single firefighter to put them out. London, New York, Tokyo will burn until there is nothing left to burn. Then comes the rise of Mother Nature. She shows no mercy. Weeds will tear apart the pavement. Vines will strangle buildings. The concrete jungle that rappers often sing about will become a real jungle. A few decades pass. Wood will rot first. Goodbye to those lovely suburban houses. Steel? You think it's tough? Wrong. If not painted and maintained, rust will eat away at the joints. Majestic suspension bridges will snap in two and plunge into the rivers. Skyscrapers, symbols of corporate power, will buckle like old skeletons and collapse. A few centuries later, almost everything on the ground will be leveled. Perhaps the Egyptian pyramids or the ruins of Petra will last a bit longer because they are made of stone and located in dry places. But eventually, sandstorms and earthquakes will grind them into dust. If you hope aliens will find the Eiffel Tower 1 million years from now to know how romantic humans were, then my condolences. They will only see dust. But that's not all. The most interesting question is, what about 100 million years from now? When every physical structure has vanished, what will future geologists find in the sediment layer of our era? They will find ghosts that cannot be erased. First, the carbon signature. From the Industrial Revolution to now, we have pumped 550 billion tons of carbon into the atmosphere. Carbon from fossil fuels has a very distinct isotopic flavor, less carbon-13. It is like a tattoo on the atmosphere and the ocean. Even if millions of years pass, the sediment layer of this era will still show an isotopic anomaly, a sign that says, hey, someone burned this whole world up. Second, the mass extinction. We are living in and causing the 6th mass extinction. The rate of species disappearance is currently 100 to 1,000 times higher than the natural rate. The fossil record will show a sudden break. Biodiversity collapsing instantly, followed by an explosion of generalist species like rats, cockroaches, and crows. We are the meteor of this era. And third, our greatest legacy, plastic. We produce 400 million tons of plastic every year. It is everywhere. Mount Everest, the Mariana Trench, inside whale bellies, and in your own blood. Plastic does not biodegrade. It just breaks down into crumbs. Over millions of years, these microplastics will sink to the ocean floor, mix with mud, and compress into rock. Scientists call them technofossils. A new layer of rock, unprecedented in Earth's history, woven from synthetic polymers. A plastic stratum. That's not all. We also leave behind other crazy things. Aluminum. In nature, pure aluminum is extremely rare, but we have dragged it out of the ore, processed it, and scattered it all over the planet. Cans, airplanes, foil. A sediment layer filled with pure aluminum will be a glaring anomaly. Concrete. The mass of concrete we have poured is now equal to the total biomass of every living plant. Cities sinking under the sea will form massive artificial limestone layers. And finally, the most terrifying mark, radioactivity. Between 1945 and 1963, nuclear tests scattered plutonium and cesium across the globe. No matter where you are, in the soil beneath your feet, there are traces of atomic bombs. This radioactive layer will persist for tens of thousands of years, creating a clear line in the geological record, marking the beginning of the Anthropocene. So there you have it. If a geologist from another civilization digs up Earth 100 million years from now, what will they see? They will see a paper-thin layer of sediment filled with plastic, aluminum, concrete, abnormally high carbon concentrations, and emitting radioactive signals. Inside it are the fossils of mass-extinct creatures. But here is the twist. Will they look at that mess and say, oh, this is the work of an intelligent primate species that developed high technology? Or will they look at it and think, wow, a weird volcanic eruption spewed out radioactive lava and killed everything? How do we distinguish between natural and artificial when everything has been crushed into rock? The answer lies in the logic traps that modern scientists themselves are falling into. Do you hear that sound? That is the sound of destruction, but it is also the sound of progress. We often think nuclear energy is the pinnacle of human intellect. Oppenheimer, Einstein, fission reactors. Only genius minds could create them, right? If we find radioactive traces in the past, surely it must be a technological civilization. Dead wrong, Mother Nature got there before us, and she is a master con artist. Let's rewind time to 2 billion years ago. Location: Gabon, Africa, at a place called Oklo. No humans, no aliens, just bacteria and rocks. But there, geological conditions were so perfect that natural uranium ore reached critical mass. The result? A series of natural nuclear reactors started up. They boiled groundwater, sustaining fission reactions for hundreds of thousands of years. They created energy. They created radioactive waste. They altered isotope ratios. Completely natural. So what is the problem here? Imagine our future squid geologist, that same guy. He finds a radioactive layer. If he is a careful person, he will analyze the isotope ratio and say, ah, this looks like human weapons, because our ratio is different from nature. But what if he knows nothing about nuclear technology? What if he never built a bomb? He will look at that pile of radiation and make a blunt pronouncement, probably just another Oklo phenomenon. And that's it. Our entire civilization is brushed aside and labeled a curious geological phenomenon. This is the fatal weakness of modern science. We always look for natural explanations first. That is a correct principle, I don't deny it. If you hear hoofbeats, think horses, don't think unicorns. But this principle also creates a massive blind spot. See carbon levels skyrocket? Must be volcanic eruptions. See global temperatures rise fast? Must be methane release from the seabed. See mass death of organisms? See must be a meteor fall. We have massive archives of data. Ice cores, marine sediments, rock samples. but we only use them to study climate or minerals. We don't search for spaceships or plastic factories. Frank and Schmidt pointed out a bitter truth. We only find what we intentionally look for. If you don't ask the question, was there a civilization, you will never design the methods to detect it. You will only see what you want to see, a wild and silent Earth. What did these two scientists propose? They said, hey, let's try digging through the old files. Look at the PETM event, Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, 56 million years ago. Earth heated up suddenly. Carbon skyrocketed. And why not try looking for synthetic chemicals in that sediment layer? Why not look for heavy metals or rare earths clustering abnormally? Why not check if the carbon isotope ratios resemble fossil fuel burning? Do you know what the funny answer is? No one has done that systematically yet. Absence of evidence is sometimes simply the absence of investigation. But there is a place where Earth cannot erase traces, a place where time is almost frozen. Space. Earth is a blender. We will talk about this in detail in the next part. But the Moon, Mars, no rain, no strong winds, no plate tectonics swallowing everything. A footprint on the Moon will remain intact for billions of years, unless hit by a meteor. If an ancient civilization had ever flown into space, their trash would still have to be there. Have we found anything yet? Number. The Moon has been photographed. Mars has robots running around. No pyramids, no black monoliths. This is the strongest argument against the Silurian Hypothesis. If they were as good as us, they must have flown out there, right? But hold on. Don't jump to conclusions. Do you know how vast the solar system is? We have only scratched the surface of Mars. We have only hung out at a few spots on the Moon. Deep craters on Mercury? Icy moons of Jupiter? The asteroid belt? All unexplored. A broken spaceship or a flag planted on a distant rock would be completely invisible to our telescopes. The fact that we haven't found them doesn't mean they aren't there. It just means we are like a nearsighted person looking for a needle in a haystack without glasses. However, even if we leave behind plastic, radiation, or even fly to Mars, there is a force even stronger than time, stronger than oblivion, an enemy that never sleeps. That enemy is this planet itself. Earth is not a sweet home. It is a brutal recycling machine. It will swallow every piece of evidence, crush every legacy, and melt down all history. You see, we often think of Earth as a museum, a place that preserves history, where fossils lie still waiting for us to come and dust them off. But the truth? Earth is a recycling factory, a giant crusher, operating ceaselessly for the past 4.5 billion years. Its mission is to wipe out everything on the surface and melt it down into something new. If you want to hide a corpse, don't bury it in the backyard. Throw it to the earth. Let's start with the silent enemies: rain, wind, and rivers. We look at the Grand Canyon and see majestic beauty, but a geologist looks at it and sees violence. The Colorado River took 6 million years to cut through miles of hard rock. Water wears down stone. That is not just a proverb, it is a death sentence for civilization. Look at the city you are living in. Reinforced concrete, tempered glass, looks eternal, right? But to geology, they are just paper toys. As soon as humans disappear, frost will pry open cracks. Acid rain will dissolve concrete like an effervescent tablet. Wind will abrade the edges. Just 10,000 years, a blink of an eye in history, everything on the ground will be leveled. 1 million years, even the foundations will be gone. Dust returns to dust. But erosion is just the prelude. The real destroyer lies deep beneath our feet. The Earth's crust is not one solid block. It consists of 15 major tectonic plates floating on a sea of molten rock called the asthenosphere. And they move, slowly but surely. What happens when two plates collide? Usually, one plate will slide under the other. This process is called subduction. This is where things get terrifying. The subducted plate will carry everything on its back: sediment, fossils, cities, plastic waste, straight down into the mantle. There, temperatures of thousands of degrees Celsius will melt everything into magma. Every structure, every order, every piece of evidence, boom, dissolved, becomes liquid lava. Listen to this number to see the brutality. There is no oceanic crust on Earth older than 200 million years. Everything older than that has been subducted and recycled. If a brilliant civilization had once built their empire on the ocean floor 300 million years ago, sorry, they have been cooked into lava and spewed out of some volcano already. Evidence of them is a big fat zero. But Zorro, you will say, continental crust is older. We live on continents. True. Continental crust can exist for 4 billion years, but it doesn't stand still to preserve your legacy. Continents collide to form mountains. The Himalayas? That is India ramming its head into Asia. Rock is buried, heated, and compressed under terrifying pressure. This process is called metamorphism. Imagine the fossil record is a computer hard drive containing data about a civilization. The metamorphic process is like throwing that hard drive into a furnace, then running a steamroller over it back and forth. Sedimentary rock turns into schist or gneiss. Soil layers are twisted. Fossils are stretched, distorted beyond recognition. The data files are completely corrupted. We try to reconstruct the past from tiny zircon fragments left behind, but the big picture, it was torn apart long ago. So back to the original question. Was anyone here before us? The Silurian Hypothesis does not give a yes or no answer. It does not assert that lizard people or Atlanteans ever existed. Its real value lies in the fact that it slaps our arrogance in the face. It reminds us that we are not the eternal masters of this planet. We are just short-term tenants. Our traces, whether plastic or radiation, will fade. Earth will wipe us clean, just as it wiped clean those who might have come before. And most importantly, absence of evidence does not mean nothing ever happened. It just means we are looking at a history book that has been torn up, burned, and recycled multiple times. Perhaps we are truly alone. Perhaps we are the first and only industrial civilization. That is a lonely thought, but also full of responsibility. But when you look at a rock by the roadside or an ancient cliff face, keep a little bit of doubt. Who knows? Just who knows? Inside that lifeless layer of stone lies the ash of dreams, cities, and songs of a species that has been forgotten. You see, it takes hours to build, and just a sneeze to turn it into trash. We humans suffer from a chronic disease, delusions of grandeur. We look at skyscrapers, giant dams, and smugly think, this thing will last forever. Sorry to burst your bubble. To the Earth, our brilliant civilization is just a thin layer of dust on the windshield. And the Earth is about to turn on the wipers. Geologists, people who like to use fancy words, call Earth's history a palimpsest, meaning a piece of paper that has been written on, scraped off, and then written over. Sounds poetic, but the reality is much more brutal. Earth doesn't rewrite, it crushes. The geological record is not a textbook carefully kept in a library. It is the rough draft of a crazy screenwriter, tearing out old pages to write new ones every day. Artifacts on the ground, Rain and wind will erode them until not even molecules remain. Artifacts at the bottom of the sea? Congratulations. You just won a one-way ticket into the magma furnace of Earth's crust. If you want to leave a will for 50 million years later, don't carve it on stone. It's useless. We often marvel at the T-Rex skeleton in the museum. Oh, the king of dinosaurs. Actually, that T-Rex wasn't a king. He was the luckiest guy on Earth. Or unluckiest, depending on how you look at it. Do you know the odds of becoming a fossil are harder than winning the jackpot? Most creatures die, rot, get eaten, bones turn to powder. End of movie. No after credits. To get on the museum shelf, you have to die according to the ISO standard procedure. Die quickly. Die in a place with lots of mud or sediment. Be buried immediately before hyenas can tear you apart. Lie still there for a few tens of millions of years without being crushed by earthquakes. We have only found 1% of species that ever existed. The other 99% have evaporated from history as if they never appeared. The fossil record is not a documentary. It is just a few blurry selfies left over after a wild party lasting 4 billion years. Now let's make an interesting comparison. A giant dinosaur, a modern city. Which is more durable? The dinosaur wins. Bones are much harder than reinforced concrete. We find stone tools 3 million years old because, well, they are stone. Stone is durable. But if a superior civilization existed 50 million years ago, then all their great works, every highway, every plastic spoon, have had a destruction time 15 times longer than those scabrous rocks. The probability of finding a screw of theirs, low enough to be practically hopeless. That's not to mention, what if they didn't use screws? What if their technology was made of biological fungi? Or they built houses out of air bubbles? We would look at their ruins and say, "Ah, what a beautiful natural rock pile." This is the painful slap from the universe for archaeologists. Want to find eternal evidence? Go to Mars or the Moon. Those planets are dead. No plate tectonics, no rain or wind. You throw a beer can on the Moon, a billion years later, aliens arrive and still see it lying there. The Moon is a wonderful storage warehouse. But Earth? Oh no. Earth is a housewife obsessed with cleaning, Marie Kondo style. This tectonic plate no longer sparks joy. Throw it into the magma furnace. This mountain range is old? Grind it down. The very things that create life, water, air, dynamic geology, are the things that wipe out evidence of that life. Earth is both a gentle mother and the most ruthless eliminator of witnesses. We are living in a crime scene where the killer is constantly mopping the floor with acid. So, don't expect to find a fossilized iPhone 6. If someone was here before us, they have been whitewashed from the records by Earth. But there is one thing that even this difficult landlady struggles to scrub completely clean. Not bones, not stones, but abnormal fevers. "56 million years ago. A blink of an eye in cosmic history, but a nightmare for Earth's creatures. Imagine you are going on vacation to the Arctic. What do you expect? Ice and snow? Polar bears? Bone-chilling cold? Big mistake. At that time, the Arctic Ocean was 23 degrees Celsius. You could wear a bikini and drink coconut cocktails in a place where today there is only permafrost. Earth didn't just warm up, it ran a fever. A deadly fever called the PETM, Paleocene-Eocene Thermal Maximum. Within a mere 20,000 years, a tick of the geological clock, global temperatures skyrocketed by 5 to 8 degrees Celsius. The oceans got so hot that marine life felt like it was being boiled. Oxygen disappeared from deep waters. Species went extinct en masse. This was not normal climate change. This was thermal shock. What was the culprit? Carbon. Lots of carbon. Geological detectives, otherwise known as scientists, estimate between 2,000 and 5,000 billion tons of carbon were pumped into the atmosphere. But here is the detail that makes this case interesting. This type of carbon was very picky. It was depleted in carbon-13. In plain English, that means it had an organic origin. It wasn't like the carbon belched out by volcanoes. It was like the carbon born from things that were once alive. So, who opened that giant carbon valve? The leading hypothesis of the scientific community, methane hydrate, also known as burning ice. Imagine vast stores of frozen methane gas under the seabed. Earth warms up a bit, ice melts, methane escapes, Earth gets hotter, more ice melts. Boom! A deadly feedback loop. Other suspects include volcanoes in the North Atlantic or Earth's orbit being out of phase. All are natural, reasonable, and boring explanations. But hold on. Let's put on the skeptical detective hat. Why am I dragging up a story from 56 million years ago to tell you? Because the PETM is the most terrifying mirror image of ourselves. Look at the list of PETM symptoms. Massive discharge of carbon into the atmosphere? Yes. Carbon of organic origin? Yes. Skyrocketing temperatures? Yes. Ocean acidification? Yes. Sound familiar? That is exactly what our industrial civilization is doing right now. We are burning fossil fuels, organic origin, releasing carbon, and heating up the planet. If an alien geologist visits Earth 50 million years from now, they will look at the rock of our era and see a second PTM event. And the million-dollar question here is, when we look back at the first PTM event 56 million years ago, how can we be 100% sure it was due to natural burning ice and not due to some stupid civilization that burned too much coal and drove too many cars? Calm down. Don't jump to the conclusion that lizard people were flying spaceships back then. Current science says, no artificial evidence, no plastic found, no nuclear reactors found in the PETM sediment layer. The volcano and burning ice reasons are very convincing. But the problem is, scientists find what they expect to find. They look for volcanic ash, they see volcanic ash. They look for biological evidence, they see fossils. They do not look for synthetic plastics or industrial waste in 56 million year old rock. Why? Because who would be crazy enough to look for something that couldn't exist? This is the blind spot of science. You cannot find evidence of a crime if you are adamant that no murder occurred. The PETM event is a perfect thought experiment for the Silurian Hypothesis. It proves that a catastrophic climate change event caused by nature looks exactly like an event caused by industry. Chemical signs, the same. Environmental consequences, identical. So where does the difference lie? It lies in the microscopic details that we might have missed. Yet, things that do not belong to nature, things that shouldn't be there. Do you know what humanity's greatest legacy is? Not Shakespeare, not the theory of relativity, nor is it love. It is trash. More specifically, synthetic compounds, plastic, radioactive substances, things that Mother Nature never created, but we produce enthusiastically as if tomorrow were the apocalypse. If we want to catch a dead civilization red-handed, don't look for cities. Look for their landfills. The Silurian Hypothesis poses a tough question. If an intelligent species existed 56 million years ago, what would they leave behind that Earth wouldn't digest? The answer lies in the periodic table of chemicals. If they had a nuclear war or simply used nuclear energy, we would find plutonium-244 or curium-247. These isotopes do not exist naturally. If you see them in rock, it means someone was playing around with atoms. If they were addicted to plastic like us, synthetic polymers can survive for a very long time as microparticles, buried in seabed sediment. We won't find intact Coca-Cola bottles, but we might find a paper-thin layer of sediment containing bizarre molecules that nature never synthesizes. But here lies the problem. We have never found those things in the rock layers of the PETM era. Why? Because no one was there? Or because we are blind? This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a methodological issue. Science operates based on hypotheses. You formulate a hypothesis, then go look for evidence to test it. What are geologists studying the period 56 million years ago looking for? They look for volcanic ash. They look for pollen. They look for seashells. They do not test the soil and rock for Teflon or PVC plastic. Why would they? Who would be crazy enough to look for industrial trash in the age of lemurs? Do you see the vicious circle? We don't look for evidence of civilization because we believe there was no civilization. And because we don't look, we conclude there is no evidence. The PETM record is clean because we only use a natural filter to scan it. Frank and Schmidt, the fathers of this hypothesis, propose that it is time we try scanning with an artificial filter, even if only to make sure we aren't missing an elephant in the room. The PETM is not the only suspect. Earth's history is full of corpses. Look at the Permian-Triassic extinction event 252 million years ago. The Great Dying. 90% of marine life, 70% of land life wiped out. Official cause? The Siberian Traps, a region of volcanoes that erupted continuously for millions of years, spewing CO2 and choking the planet. Or the event 66 million years ago. Goodbye, dinosaurs. Cause? A rock from space fell on Mexico, plus volcanoes in India. All are natural causes. Sure, volcanoes, meteors, climate change. But look closely again. What would an out-of-control industrial civilization cause? Climate change, ecosystem collapse, mass extinction. What would a global nuclear war look like after 100 million years? Exactly like an asteroid impact accompanied by a global layer of radioactive dust. I'm not saying dinosaurs were destroyed by atomic bombs. I'm just saying the symptoms of a natural disaster and a civilization-induced disaster are terrifyingly similar. Earth only has a few ways to die, whether strangled by Mother Nature or due to a spoiled child committing suicide. The corpse left behind looks exactly the same. There is a famous scientific adage, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Want to claim there was an ancient civilization? Show me a fossilized spaceship. But we don't have one. The Silurian Hypothesis reminds us of a humble truth. The absence of extraordinary evidence does not mean nothing happened. It might simply be the extraordinary has been ground down by time into the ordinary. Earth heals its wounds very quickly. The PETM lasted 200,000 years. Afterward, the climate cooled. The oceans turned blue again. New species evolved. Whatever the cause, Earth cleaned up the scene perfectly. It buried everything under kilometers of earth and rock. And we, detectives arriving 50 million years late, stand looking at a lush green lawn and conclude, no murder happened here. But humans don't like silence. When science cannot answer, imagination speaks up. And that is when myths are born. Atlantis, Lemuria, Mu. Humans are a strange creature. We refuse to accept that we are alone. We also refuse to accept that we are the pinnacle of intelligence. Deep down, we always yearn to believe someone greater, more capable, and cooler than us once lived here. That is why stories of lost civilizations never die. They are as persistent as cockroaches. Let's start with the A-list star of the myth village, Atlantis. Everyone knows it. The Golden Island Empire, superior technology, drowned by the sea god in one night for the crime of being arrogant. But what is the brutal truth? Atlantis comes from Plato, a Greek philosopher who liked telling fables. Plato was not a historian. He was a brilliant screenwriter of the 4th century BC. He made up Atlantis to teach the Athenians a lesson about hubris. Don't be cocky, or Zeus will serve you a beating. That was the message. But what did humanity do? We ignored the moral lesson and rushed off to find the treasure. For over 2,000 years, people have dived all over the Mediterranean, the Caribbean, even Antarctica to find Atlantis. The result? A big fat zero. There is no sunken continent in the Atlantic. Plato trolled the whole world painfully for 2 millennia. If Atlantis is a blockbuster, then Lemuria and Mu are cheap B-grade movies. In the 19th century, scientists were confused. Why are lemurs found in both India and Madagascar when these 2 places are separated by an ocean? Their solution: there must have been a land bridge connecting them. Then it sank. They called it Lemuria. But then, plate tectonics theory was born. Turns out continents drift. No one needed a land bridge. Lemuria was wiped out by science. But mysterious spiritual groups wouldn't let it go. They turned Lemuria from a failed zoological hypothesis into the homeland of a superior race, possessing a third eye and superior spirituality. And Mu? A continent in the Pacific Ocean invented by a guy named James Churchward based on invisible tablets that only he was allowed to see. Trust me, the bottom of the Pacific hides nothing as big as Australia. Why are we so obsessed with these stories? Why do we want to believe the ancients had lasers and jet planes? Because of psychology. We are nostalgic creatures. We look at the chaotic world today, war, pollution, TikTok, and sigh. The old days must have been better than this. We yearn for a lost golden age, a stolen paradise. The idea that humanity once reached the peak and then collapsed brings a strange comfort, that we are not the first to make mistakes. And another part is fear. We fear that we are unique, because if we are unique and we destroy ourselves, then the universe's story of intelligence ends here. Back to the Silurian Hypothesis. Scientists Frank and Schmidt are not trying to find Atlantis. They aren't looking for lizard people. They are teaching us humility. They remind us that Earth is a revolving stage. Actors come and go. Sets are built and then destroyed. We, Homo sapiens, are standing in the spotlight right now. We build, we burn, we scream. But 50 million years from now, your city will be a thin smear of dust and rock. Our plastic will be a strange sediment layer, and our radiation will be a faint signal that perhaps no one will bother to read. If there was a previous civilization, Earth processed them cleanly, and Earth will do the same to us. Look at this blue color. The Pacific Ocean, vast, deep, and extremely cruel. Have you ever heard of Mu or Lemuria? Lost continents, earthly paradises where humans lived with superior wisdom before being swallowed by the ocean in a single night? Sounds fascinating. It's like the script of a Hollywood blockbuster that everyone wants to believe is real. But I have bad news for the dreamers. The ocean doesn't work like that. At the bottom of this giant water tank, there is no room for sunken continents. The Pacific floor is oceanic crust, born from volcanic ridges and moving slowly, very slowly, towards the geological incinerators we call subduction zones. There is no magic. No geological mechanism that allows a giant continent made of lightweight granite to suddenly jump off a building to the bottom of the ocean. Those beautiful islands scattered out there, those are the tops of erupting volcanoes, not the remaining chimneys of a dead civilization, Mu and Lemuria. Sorry, they are just products of imaginative minds lacking geological knowledge. So why? Why do those names still sell like hotcakes in occult bookstores? Simple. Fear and hope. We, humans, have a pathological, psychological need to believe that there was once a golden age better than this messy reality. We want to believe we are the descendants of fallen gods, not a bunch of monkeys who just learned how to wear pants. But, hold on, don't turn off the video yet. Because even though Mu and Lemuria are pseudoscience trash, the fear of the world being submerged is real. Look at this. Noah and the Ark, Deucalion of Greece, Manu and the fish of the Hindus, Utnapishtim in the Epic of Gilgamesh, even you the Great taming the flood in China, or the stories of Australian Aboriginals. Do you see the common point? Water. Water everywhere. Water rising and wiping out everything. These cultures are tens of thousands of miles apart. No internet, no carrier pigeons. They couldn't copy-paste each other's homework. So why do they tell the same story? The simplest explanation is often the scariest. They are retelling a collective traumatic memory. Rewind to 12,000 years ago, the end of the Ice Age. The world then was not like now. Giant ice sheets covering North America and Europe began to melt. And when I say melt, don't think of the ice cube in your whiskey glass. Think of billions of tons of water trapped in glaciers suddenly being released. Global sea levels rose by over 100 meters. Imagine that. 100 meters. It swallowed fertile coastal plains where our ancestors had lived for thousands of years. This was not a rain shower. This was an apocalypse happening in slow motion. But sometimes it wasn't slow at all. Scientists call them meltwater pulses. Giant glacial lakes bursting their dams, releasing a horrific amount of water into the ocean in an instant. For the people living at that time, it was the wrath of God. Look at the Black Sea. The hypothesis suggests that in 5,600 BC, this place was just a peaceful freshwater lake. Then the Mediterranean rose, spilling over the Bosporus Strait with the power of hundreds of Niagaras, turning that lake into a salty sea and drowning every coastal village. Survivors fled for their lives, carrying the story of the giant water monster. And boom, we have a legend. Or Doggerland, the land that once connected Britain to Europe. Once home to oak forests and bustling villages, now it is the cold floor of the North Sea. Australian Aboriginals still tell of coastal roads that now lie deep under 7,000 years of seawater. That is not the myth of flashy Atlantis. That is the painful memory of actual geography. But here's the trap, friends. Human memory is a master con artist. We are not tape recorders. Every time we recall, we create a little more. A flooded valley turns into a sunken continent. A collapsed bamboo village turns into a gold-plated empire. Plato described Atlantis. Maybe he was inspired by the truth, but he added spice to sell his philosophical story. A continent larger than Asia and Libya combined. Come on, Plato, you were bragging a bit too hard there. Myths, legends, they are wonderful cultural artifacts. They show what we fear, what we yearn for, but they are not historical evidence. We know our intuition is right. The past holds dark secrets. Civilizations have risen and fallen. Knowledge has been lost. But to find them again, we cannot rely on stories told by the fire. This earth doesn't care about your psychological needs. It doesn't care if you want to believe in paradise lost or not. It hides its secrets under tons of earth, rock, and time. And the only way to dig those secrets up is not to sit daydreaming about Atlantis. It is to pick up a shovel and dig. Because sometimes what we find underground is crazier and more unbelievable than any myth you've ever heard. Welcome to Şanlıurfa. Hot, dusty, and seems boring, right? About 15 kilometers away, there is a hill locals call Göbekli Tepe, Potbelly Hill. A name that sounds silly and harmless. For thousands of years, farmers plowed that potbelly, clearing away nuisance stones to plant wheat, completely unaware that they were standing on the coffin lid of a secret that would tear apart every history book you ever studied. In 1963, genius brains from the University of Chicago and Istanbul came here. They looked at the broken stone fragments, nodded sagely, appearing wise, and pronounced, "Ah, just an abandoned medieval cemetery, nothing worth seeing." Then they left. That was perhaps the biggest mistake in the history of modern archaeology. It wasn't until 30 years later, in 1994, that Klaus Schmidt, a stubborn German guy, returned. He looked at those fragments and realized what those before him had missed. This was not natural rubble. These were traces of human hands. Schmidt started digging, and what he pulled up from the earth was not mediocre bones. Giant stone circles, T-shaped stone pillars up to 5 meters tall and weighing up to 50 tons. Do you hear that clearly? 50 tons. But the craziest thing isn't the size. Look at the carvings on them. No flowers or leaves, no peaceful scenes of daily life. Only monsters, lions, rampaging bulls, venomous snakes, scorpions, vultures stalking corpses. A collection of prehistoric nightmares. The carving craftsmanship is so exquisite it makes modern sculptors break out in a cold sweat. And this is where I drop the truth bomb on your head. Carbon dating says these structures were built around 9,600 BC. That means it is 11,600 years old. Let's do a little math. It is 6,000 years older than Stonehenge. It is 7,000 years older than the pyramids of Giza. When the Egyptians didn't even know how to stack bricks, here, people were erecting massive stone cathedrals. And who built it? This is the slap in the face of academia. Hunter-gatherers. Textbooks tell you that. Humans discovered agriculture, had surplus food, built complex societies, then built temples. A logical, safe, and boring process. Göbekli Tepe says, dead wrong. The builders of this place didn't know how to farm. They had no livestock. They lived nomadically. But they gathered hundreds of people, maybe thousands, to do something crazy. Build a house for the gods. Schmidt proposed a hypothesis that silenced everyone. Religion appeared before civilization. People didn't gather to farm. People gathered because of faith, because of the fear of gods. And to feed that crowd of hungry builders, they were forced to invent agriculture. Wild wheat right nearby was domesticated for the first time for exactly that reason. The gods dragged humans out of the caves and forced them to pick up the hoe. But the story doesn't stop there. Göbekli Tepe is not a residential area. No one lived here. It was a festival center, a church, a place of bloody partying with mountains of gazelle and bison bones. And then, about 8,000 years ago, something weird happened. They didn't abandon it. They didn't leave it for the rain and sun to erode. They buried it alive. Imagine the effort spent building it. Then imagine the even more massive effort to fill this entire complex with thousands of tons of dirt and rubble. Intentionally. Meticulously. As if they wanted to hide it away from the eyes of future generations. Or perhaps they wanted to seal something away. Why? A new religion took the throne? A disaster made this place a taboo land? Or did they fear the very gods they had created? This burial preserved the stone pillars intact to an unbelievable degree, but it also created a terrifying void in human memory. For over 9,000 years, we completely forgot about it. Not a single line of text, not a single oral story remained. A glorious civilization, talented engineers of the Stone Age, all vanished into nothingness until Klaus Schmidt brushed away the dust of time. This teaches us a lesson about arrogance, friends. We think we know everything about the past, but Göbekli Tepe is proof that the limit of memory is real. If a great structure like this could be completely forgotten, then how many other civilizations, how many other achievements are lying silent beneath our feet, waiting to be found, or forever lost? We know floods happened. We know the ghosts at Göbekli Tepe are real. But what drove this sudden change? What turned the Earth from a warming paradise back into a deadly freezer, which might have wiped out the first chapters of human history? Look at this world. 12,800 years ago, Earth is in a honeymoon phase. The old ice age is retreating. Ice melts. Sea levels rise slowly. Lush forests spread north. Mammoths, mastodons, giant ground sloths, all are enjoying nature's buffet. Everything seems to be on the right track to becoming the warm world we live in today. A rosy prospect. Shutterstock. But the universe. The universe always has a dark sense of humor. In a span of just 1 year, yes, you heard that right, maybe just 1 year, someone pulled the plug on Earth's heater. Temperatures in the northern hemisphere freefell. In Greenland, temperatures dropped by 14 degrees Celsius almost overnight. Imagine going to sleep in Hawaii and waking up in the middle of Antarctica. The Ice Age didn't just return, it returned with a terrible vengeance. Scientists gave this disaster a name that sounds very poetic. Younger Dryas, named after a tiny wildflower that grows in the Arctic. Don't let the name fool you. This isn't about flowers. This is 1,200 years of frozen hell that derailed human history. Why? Why did the warming Earth suddenly have a fit of shivers? Textbooks are safe friends. We'll talk about thermohaline circulation. Basically, ice melted too fast, fresh water poured into the North Atlantic, short-circuiting the ocean's giant heat pump. Sounds very scientific, very reasonable, and boring. Most scientists nodded at that theory, but in 2007, a group of rebel researchers walked into the academic bar and slammed the table. They said, "Wrong. It wasn't water, it was fire. Welcome to the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis." They claimed that about 12,900 years ago, Earth was ambushed. A comet or an asteroid, or a swarm of debris from space collided with our planet. Not a single knockout punch like the one that killed the dinosaurs. This was like a shotgun blast. Airbursts, scattered impacts. The result? Continental-scale wildfires. The sky darkened by ash. Sudden ice melt causing floods, then eternal night blocking the sun, pushing Earth into an instant ice age. Sounds like a Michael Bay movie, right? But look at this thing. This is called the black mat. At many places across North America and Europe, scientists find a thin, jet-black sediment layer. Inside that layer of soot is the universe's crime scene. Magnetic spherules, tiny drops of metal and glass formed only at extreme temperatures, hotter than any forest fire. Nanodiamonds, billions of microscopic diamonds, compressed by terrifying impact pressure. Platinum and iridium. Rare elements on Earth, but specialties of meteors. Shocked quartz, sand grains fractured in a way that only a nuclear explosion or a meteor could do. Of course, The scientific community is arguing like cat and dog about this. The conservative camp claims the data is wrong, dating is off, results can't be replicated. The impact camp keeps releasing new evidence. It is a bloody war in the ivory tower. But whatever the cause, water or meteor, the consequence is undeniable, and it was more devastating than you think. 12,800 years ago. This is exactly when the megafauna of North America was wiped out. Mammoths, extinct, saber-toothed cats, gone. Giant ground sloths, dire wolves, American camels, all evaporated in a geological blink of an eye. And not just animals. The Clovis culture, the first skilled hunters to dominate North America, also vanished mysteriously at that same time. People often blame humans, that our ancestors were too gluttonous, so they hunted mammoths to extinction, that we are the destroyer species. But think again. Could tribes holding stone spears kill off millions of giant beasts across an entire continent in such a short time? Or were they, and their prey, both victims of something bigger, much more terrifying? A disaster falling from the sky. Fire scorching the heavens, then rising water, and finally, ice. If this hypothesis is true, then stories of the Great Flood, of the apocalypse, of the sky falling, are not fairy tales. They are news reports recorded in the horror of the survivors, people who watched their world end and had to start over, in the dark. And when the Younger Dryas night fell, what did humans do? They huddled together. They forgot old achievements, and the memory of a brilliant era before gradually sank into oblivion. But the story doesn't end here, because from those ashes, a truth about human nature will be revealed. We have come a long way, haven't we? From great floods drowning the world to ghostly temples in Turkey and even punches from outer space. But today, I want to talk about the most dangerous thing in all these stories. Not comets, not floodwaters. It is your brain. We like to think that human memory is like a computer hard drive. Save data in, and 10 years later open it up, and it remains exactly the same. Mistake. Human memory is not a recording device. It is a mad and emotional painter. Every time you recall the past, you are repainting that picture once again. You add a little color, remove a few ugly details. That is why I hate to say this to fans of Atlantis, Mu or Lemuria. Those places are not real. Don't turn off the video yet. Hear me out. Plato was not a journalist. He was a philosopher. He made up Atlantis to teach the Athenians a lesson about arrogance. A continent larger than Asia? Come on. But why do we still believe? Why do books about Mu still sell? Because we need them. We are the orphans of history, yearning to find our wealthy parents. We cannot accept that we are merely the descendants of filthy hunters. We want to believe that we were once gods, living in crystal cities. Mythology is a painkiller for the soul, but it is poison for science. Look at this timeline. This is human history. Homo sapiens. About 300,000 years, and this tiny little line at the end of the chart is recorded history. 5,000 years. Do you see that giant gap? 295,000 years of darkness. What did we do during all that time? Sit and watch our fingernails grow? Of course not. We loved, we fought, we built, and we declined. But we forgot. Göbekli Tepe is the most brutal wake-up call. A magnificent, complex, glorious structure, buried and completely forgotten for 9,000 years. If Klaus Schmidt hadn't been curious enough to turn over a few stones, we would still think humans of that time were just savages. The question that keeps me awake is not, where is Atlantis? It is, how many Göbekli Tepes have we forgotten? Your intuition is right. Human history is much deeper, and more mysterious than textbooks say. But intuition is not evidence. The feeling of absence does not prove the existence of Vimana aircraft or ancient lasers. This Earth is very cruel. It doesn't care about your psychological needs. It wipes out traces. Wood rots. Bones turn to dust. Iron rusts. Rock is crushed by glaciers. The only way to reclaim memory from the hands of death is not to meditate and dream of Lemuria. The only way is to pick up a shovel. It is to drill deep into the ice in Greenland. It is to analyze radioactive isotopes. It is to scan with LiDAR through the Amazon jungle. The truth does not lie in soothing fairy tales. The truth lies beneath the cold mud. We are an amnesiac species, waking up in a ruined house after a storm. We don't remember who we are or why the walls are crumbling. Fragments like Göbekli Tepe or the legend of the Great Flood are the only clues left. Don't weave them into myths. Use them as a map, because the biggest secret of the past is not what we remember. It is what we have forgotten, and what is waiting beneath our feet, patient, silent, waiting for a day to be illuminated once again. Do you believe in coincidences? I don't. When a series of giant animals all drop dead together, when global temperatures freefall like an elevator with a snapped cable, and when humanity's young civilization suddenly powers down, that is not a coincidence. That is a crime scene. For decades, scientists, our dear friends in the ivory tower, have scratched their heads. Why did everything collapse so fast and so synchronously around 12,800 years ago? They talk about climate change, about overhunting. Sounds reasonable, but bland. The truth is much more interesting and much more brutal. Imagine a scenario. An uninvited guest from space visits. It doesn't need to knock. It smashes the house. Blast pressure, hellfire, and then the chain collapse of the entire ecosystem. And this is where the story gets interesting. In 2024 and 2025, while you were busy scrolling TikTok, at the bottom of the cold Baffin Bay near Greenland, people found the fingerprints of the culprit. Metal fragments, microspherules. These things do not belong to the ocean. They are the remnants of a cosmic collision right at the Younger Dryas boundary. For the first time, we found evidence at the bottom of the sea. But there is always a damn but, right? The skeptics, the conservative detectives, still shake their heads vigorously. They scream, "Where is the crater? If a meteor fell, there must be an impact crater. Where is the smoking gun?" Oh, such adorable naivety. My friends, if an ice bullet is fired into an ice wall, what will you find after the sun comes up? Nothing. If that object fell onto the thick ice sheet covering North America at that time, that crater was erased when the ice melted. Or worse. In 1908, in Tunguska, Siberia, an airburst leveled 2,000 kilometers of forest. No impact crater at all. The object exploded before touching the ground. A slap from the sky, leaving no fingerprints, leaving only destruction. The universe is a professional assassin. It knows how to dispose of evidence. But the important thing is not us arguing about how big the rock was. The important thing is, what did we lose? Let's rewind to 12,800 years ago. Humans were not the stupid cave dwellers you think. They had lived in the Americas for 1,000 years. They had technology. They had social networks. They started experimenting with agriculture. They were on the verge of brilliant development. Then, boom. The world turned upside down. Temperatures free fell. Food disappeared. The keepers of knowledge, the elders, the skilled craftsmen, died of hunger and cold. The chain of knowledge was broken. Do you know what is most terrifying? It is oblivion. A disaster large enough doesn't just kill people, it kills history. Survivors shivering in caves. What will they tell their descendants? Not complex farming techniques or stone crafting. They will tell of fire monsters in the sky, of the punishment of the gods. Truth becomes legend. Legend becomes fairy tale. And fairy tales are considered fiction. The Younger Dryas didn't wipe out the human species, but it hit the reset button for civilization. It reminds us that humanity's progress is not a straight line. It is full of gaps. Those gaps, what did we lose in them? And is this the only time the reset button was pressed in the 4.5 billion year history of this planet? Or are we just latecomers, building castles on the ruins of forgotten giants? Look at this rock. It is silent, right? It doesn't scream, doesn't tell stories, doesn't emit radio signals. We have traveled through time, seen how cruel nature is. But now, we must face the biggest alibi in history, the silence in the stone. If there was ever a great industrial civilization before us, like a sci-fi version of Atlantis, with nuclear reactors and flying cars, then where is their trash? Where are the fossilized iPhones? Where are the buried skyscrapers? Nothing. By any standard investigation standard, the geological record is suspiciously clean. The skeptics will say, "See, Zorro, no evidence means no crime." But hold on. In science, absence of evidence is not the same as evidence of absence. To understand this silence, we need to play a little mind game, a game called How Will We Disappear? Imagine our brilliant civilization is wiped out tomorrow. Let's fast forward 50 million years, an unimaginable number, but just a geological blink of an eye. Future archaeologists, maybe an intelligent species of cockroach, will find what about you and me? Do you think that steel and glass skyscraper will survive? Forget it. Erosion, oxidation, crushing, burial. Mother Nature is a great garbage disposal. Within a few million years, all our great architecture will turn into fine dust. No more Statue of Liberty, no more Great Wall. What about nuclear waste? We are so proud of our ability to cause radioactive pollution. Plutonium-239, the deadly stuff we use in weapons, has a half-life of 24,000 years. Sounds long, but after 50 million years, not a single atom left. It vanishes cleanly as if it never existed. So what do we leave behind? A paper-thin layer, a chemical stain in the rock. Future geologists will see a sudden spike in carbon-12 isotopes. They will say, "Oh, look, it seems that 50 million years ago, a large amount of organic carbon was burned." But will they conclude it was due to humans driving cars? No. They will think it was a giant volcano that just erupted, or a methane vent under the seabed that burst. Why? Because those natural events create exactly the same chemical signature as our civilization. And plastic, synthetic polymers, they will decompose, deform under the pressure and temperature of the underground. After 50 million years, your water bottle is just a vague organic chemical signal, indistinguishable from the remains of ancient seaweed. This is the bitter ending of the Silurian Hypothesis. An industrial civilization like ours, if it existed 50 million years ago, would leave behind traces that are invisible, or worse, traces that look exactly like natural phenomena. We will look at the geological record, see anomalies, climate shocks, extinction events, and we assign them safe names: volcano, meteor, natural climate change. Because our microscopes are designed to find rocks, not to find ghosts. The silence in the stone does not mean no one was there. It means time is a perfect eraser of tracks. We are looking for fossilized Ferraris, while all that remains is a thin black smear in the sediment layer. And if we cannot see ourselves in the distant future, how can we be sure we aren't standing on the ashes of someone in the deep past? I know what you're thinking. Zorro, stop it. If some guy lived here, ran loud machinery like us, then why, when we dig up the ground, do we grab these intact pots of black gold? This is the full tank argument. When humans started industrializing, we found abundant coal and oil. If someone had been here before, they must have used it all, right? A sharp argument. I like it. But it has holes. First, if that civilization existed before the Carboniferous period, before the giant forests turned into coal, then what the hell would they have to pump? They couldn't exploit something that hadn't formed. Second, who says civilization means burning dinosaur corpses? Maybe they were smarter than us. Maybe they used solar energy, geothermal, or some clean technology we haven't dreamed of. They didn't leave behind depleted oil fields because they didn't need to use them. Our arrogance is assuming that every path of development must go through a factory smokestack. Second argument, space. If they were so fancy, why don't we see flags planted on the moon? Why no rusty rovers on Mars? There is no erosion there. Trash should remain intact, right? We looked up there and saw nothing but stone dust. Conclusion: we are the first space travelers. Mistake. We have only pointed telescopes at a tiny little corner of the solar system. Finding a screw on the moon with a telescope from Earth? Good luck. And more importantly, not everyone is obsessed with flying out there. Our civilization has existed for 300,000 years, but only launched toys into space for a few decades. Who knows? Maybe they were introverts. And finally, where are their bones? We find dinosaur bones, ape-man bones. So where are the bones of the intelligent lizard man? My dear friend, becoming a fossil is like winning the jackpot lottery. The rate is extremely low. Most creatures die, rot, and vanish without a trace. And intelligence does not come with hard bones. A soft-bodied creature, or one with easily biodegradable bamboo or wooden tools, would vanish into nothingness. The silence of the fossil record is real, but it is not negative proof. Frank and Schmidt, the two authors of the Silurian Hypothesis, are not dreamers who believe in ancient aliens. They are real scientists. They doubt the existence of a prior civilization. The weight of evidence is leaning towards no. But the value of this hypothesis does not lie in the answer yes or no. It lies in the slap to our confidence. We are pointing antennas thousands of light years away to find aliens. We scan the atmospheres of other planets to find signs of life. But if right on our own home planet, we cannot even distinguish between what is a work of nature and what is the ruin of a civilization from 50 million years ago, then how dare we be sure we understand what we are seeing in a distant galaxy? The silence we hear from the stars might not be because the universe is empty. It might be because we are deaf, or simply because we don't know what we are listening to. Stone is silent, but sometimes silence is the most terrifying answer. We have spent the whole evening hunting for ghosts of past civilizations. We asked, who came before us? But now, let's flip the mirror around. Imagine one day, millions of years from now, when humans have disappeared, either extinct or left for somewhere among the stars. What will those who come after find about us? What do you think they will find? Beethoven's symphonies? Van Gogh's paintings? Or your million-view TikTok videos? No. Rock does not keep art. Rock does not care about emotions. Rock only records impact. and the story we are carving into the Earth's crust, honestly, it is a horror movie. The brand identity of humanity, it is destruction. We are operating the sixth mass extinction. The rate of species disappearance is currently 100 to 1,000 times higher than natural levels. 40,000 species are standing at death's door. The web of life, woven over millions of years, is being torn apart by us like a ragged shirt. In the future geological record, our era will appear as a razor-sharp boundary. Below is a rich, diverse world. Above is a poor world, left with only weeds. Opportunists like rats, cockroaches, those who eat our trash. Scientists call this the Anthropocene. Sounds majestic, right? But in reality, it is the tombstone of diversity. And this is our fossil, not bones, but chemistry. The future will find a strange sediment layer. It is full of nitrogen from chemical fertilizers, heavy metals from industrial zones, and especially plastic, a layer of plastiglomerate covering the globe. And don't forget the most special gift, nuclear radiation. Radioactive isotopes from thousands of atomic bomb tests will be an indelible tattoo in the rock and soil. A friendly hello sent to the future. Hey, we were here, and we knew how to blow things up. The geological record is very cruel. It does not distinguish between good or evil. When we look at the rock layer from 66 million years ago, we see traces of the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. We call that a disaster. And when future observers look at the rock layer of the 21st century, they will see us in exactly the same way. We are not poets, engineers, or dreamers in the eyes of the rock. We are a geological force. We are a conscious asteroid. We are the disaster. We pride ourselves on being creators, but our most enduring legacy is destruction. We burn energy accumulated over hundreds of millions of years in just a few centuries, acidify the oceans, and change the atmosphere so fast that Earth gets thermal shock. The asteroid is not at fault. It is just a rock obeying the laws of physics. But us, we know what we are doing. Back to the Silurian Hypothesis. Perhaps the silence of the universe, the absence of aliens, is the answer. Perhaps any civilization that develops to the point of industrialization burns itself out too quickly. They flare up brightly like a match, consume all resources, poison their planet, and then go out. They leave only a thin black smear in the rock, a chemical anomaly, and then silence. Perhaps we are the first civilization on Earth. And if we continue on this path, we are writing an indictment for ourselves. That intelligence is a mistake of creation. That we are a parasite killing the host. But the story is not over. The ink is not yet dry. Unlike an asteroid, we can steer. We have a choice. What will our legacy be? A layer of radioactive trash and bones of extinct species? Or proof that a biological species can overcome greedy instincts to reach balance? The stone is waiting to record the next chapter, and you yourself are the one holding the pen. If you shudder at this naked truth, leave a like and subscribe. Don't let this knowledge sink into oblivion like those fictional civilizations. Comment below. If you could bury something in the ground so future people know who we truly were, not trash, but the soul of humanity, what would you bury? I am Zorro. And remember, history is not just what has passed. History is what we are creating right now. See you again in the darkness.